Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bob Emery. I'm a professor at the University of Texas School of Public Health here in Houston, and would like to thank all of you for taking time to join us for this kickoff event regarding a series of seminars that our goal is to provide throughout the year to cover various topics with a recurrent theme about protecting the citizens of the state of Texas. We'll get to the introduction of our speaker here in a second, but I think it's probably best to start us off by introducing Dr. Eric Boerwinkle, the Dean of the University of Texas School of Public Health, who will describe a little bit about this Texas Epidemic Public Health Institute and its goals and objectives. So I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Boerwinkle.
Thank you very much. So hello, everyone, and I'm pleased to welcome you to the inaugural edition of TEPHI Talks, an exciting webinar series hosted by the Texas Epidemic Public Health Institute, or TEPHI for short. As Bob said, my name is Eric Boerwinkle, and I'm the Dean of the UT Health School of Public Health. I'm also serving in the interim as the agency director for TEPHI. Very briefly, TEPHI is a new state agency signed into law that is charged with ensuring that Texas is at the forefront of preparedness and readiness for the next emerging infectious agent. Its ultimate goal is to keep Texans safe and Texas' economy strong during an epidemic or pandemic or a similar public health emergency. I invite everyone to visit our website at TEPHI, which is tephi.texas.gov, and I draw your attention specifically to our ongoing training activities. These include the Certificate in Pandemic Preparedness and Response, designed as a series of 5 courses available online, really at no cost to you. At the end of today's webinar, we will share information about the Texas Health Summit, which will be on July the 14th in Houston with a simultaneous webcast. So please mark a hold in your calendar for that great event. Finally, I extend my thanks to Justin Noakes and HEB for sharing their valuable insight today, and I'll turn the program back over to Dr. Bob Emery, and he'll introduce our distinguished speaker.
Thank you, Dr. Boerwinkle. So before I get to Justin Noakes, I would also like to introduce Dr. Janelle Rios, who's with both TEPHI and the School of Public Health. Janelle is going to be operating behind the scenes to actually capture questions and comments that will be submitted via the chat feature. So one of the things we'd like to encourage all of our attendees to do is to use that chat feature as issues come up. And Janelle's job is to kind of compile those, because there'll probably be similarities with some of the topics that are brought up. And we hope to have a lively discussion as we go forward in this presentation. But in addition, we want to be able to memorialize the types of questions that are asked so that we can develop training materials for the future to address some of those concerns. Now, to our main speaker, Justin Noakes is the Director of Emergency Management at HEB. I have crossed paths with him on several occasions. He's a wonderful presenter. He is very active in the emergency preparedness and response community professionally. He's been with HEB for over 27 years and has seen and had experience with a variety of events. And just a note of disclosure, he's actually doing this presentation, which I hope we're going to hear in a moment, from Uvalde, where HEB has dispatched Justin and his team to provide assistance to those affected individuals in that area. We talked earlier today with Justin. The connection was a little bit problematic, but we think we might have it worked out. But bear with us, all of us, and let's see if we can make it work. So Justin, I hope you're on there, and let's see how it goes. I'm going to turn it over to Justin.
Hello, Robert. My name is Joaquin Jaimes. I'm the manager of emergency preparedness for HEB. As you mentioned, Justin and our team are out in Uvalde supporting the community there. So I'll be stepping in for him today. I have a very similar background, 27 years with HEB, 18 years in risk management, emergency preparedness, and I've done this presentation many times. So thanks for having us.
Thank you for filling in. Thank you. And we hope the best for Justin as well, and all of you, that you're doing important work there. Thank you.
You bet. Can y'all see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So as I mentioned, my name is Joaquin Jaimes. I'm the manager of emergency preparedness for HEB. I've been heavily involved in our COVID response and many other responses throughout the last decade or so. So pleasure to be here with you today. I'm going to speak to you a little bit about our preparedness program, how we respond to disasters and emergencies. I'll speak to the COVID response in general. And then, of course, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me, and I'll make some time at the end for questions and answers. So a little bit about the emergency preparedness program at HEB. Our priorities, number one, is always going to be our partners and their safety. As everyone is well aware, our store, we have a store in Uvalde, and although we didn't have the act of violence there at the store, it was less than half a mile from the store. And so our partners are directly and indirectly impacted. And so not only supporting our community of Uvalde, but also making sure that our store partners are taken care of and the store itself is taken care of, because it is a big part of the community. And so, as I was just mentioning to some other leaders here at HEB, we were speaking about some of our previous disasters and how absenteeism impacts our business. You know, with our partners, without our store partners, those that you see here in the pictures, the ones that wear the red shirts at the stores, without our supply chain partners that are selecting groceries and shipping them to the stores and manufacturing products, there is no HEB, there is no business. They are the most important piece of HEB and have the largest role in what we do in emergency preparedness. And so without them, we could not be successful. So their safety and their ability to work in a safe environment is priority number one. Priority number two is keeping our stores open. Just as it is in Uvalde, it is a normal day of business at our store in Uvalde. It feels a little different, a lot of impacts, a lot of emotions, but our partners are there doing the best that they can to serve our community of Uvalde and our other customers and the community. The store fed the community this morning, breakfast and lunch. And so just like in true HEB fashion, they're going to do whatever they can to support our community. So keeping our stores open is always a priority for us, not only in a situation in a situation where there's an act of violence, but in a hurricane, a pandemic, a winter storm, whatever it may be. Keeping our stores open is a priority for us because we know that they serve the community and that we have those critical commodities that people need to survive and take care of their families. So that's always going to be a priority for us to keep them open as long as safely possible. Third is keeping the safe and right products available. Having a store open without product is not a win for anyone. So making sure that we have the safe and right products available for our customers and our community, whether that be supplies for their immediate needs or long-term needs, or critical commodities such as pharmacy services, business center services, things of those natures. We're going to try to have those products as much as we can in our stores and keep them in stock pre, during, and post disaster. And then community support. As I mentioned, we're in Uvalde right now. We're taking care of the community there. We're doing everything we can to make sure that the first responders are taken care of, anybody that's been impacted is taken care of, and making sure that we're providing food and hydration support there. So that's pretty common during any emergency or disaster that HEB's involved in. We're going to make sure that our communities are taken care of. So a little about our components. I'm not going to speak to every single bullet point here, but I'll highlight a few. Business continuity is a big part of what we do for HEB. Leading that charge. We're not business continuity experts or continuity experts in every field, but we have a lot of leaders who are. And so we're responsible for facilitating facilitating and coordinating those conversations and making sure that it's either related to a process or a physical continuity plan, that those are always up and ready to go at any given time. Catastrophic incident management, the last 2.5 years, there's been plenty of incident management from the start of the pandemic. It wasn't even that long ago that we managed Hurricane Harvey in 2017. So that cycle has been continuous over the last 2.5 years. And so that is something the company relies on us heavily to do, is to be HEB's incident command, if you will. Being a liaison in the community, not only in our customers and our community support, but also government support, both and also in the non-government and other public sector support, keeping those relationships with them and making sure that they have what they need to sustain and take care of Texas with our support. So give you a little bit of a bird's eye view of what's in Uvalde today, we actually have one of our mobile kitchens there, and that's what's providing meals throughout the next few days for the community there. So our mobile kitchens, we have two of them. We have two larger mobile kitchens and one smaller. So in total, we have three mobile kitchens. The two larger ones are 57 footers, and that's what's that's what's in Uvalde today. And they're feeding hot meals 3 times a day. So out of that, they can feed roughly anywhere from about 3,500 on up meals per square per breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So that's always welcomed by the community, especially in times of disasters. For example, a hurricane, if people have lost power or something like that, and they're eating portions of peanut butter and jelly or canned tuna, a hot meal really goes a long way. It's always appreciated by the community when the mobile kitchens are there. We also have a barbecue trailer, and that's also in Uvalde, and that's helped out serving lunch today. And so we can feed about 500 people comfortably off our barbecue trailer. And then, we're always taking care of the first responder and any type of community support that's needed. What's not there is our disaster response unit, and that is what we call the DRU. And in the DRU is a mobile pharmacy, and it's been updated since this presentation, but we carry about the top 600 to 800 maintenance meds on the mobile pharmacy. And so we actually did a mock deployment with one of the counties here in Texas here just recently in preparation for hurricanes, and checked everything from nose to tail, floor to ceiling, make sure everything was up and running, and all systems were go. So we carry a mobile pharmacy along with pharmacists, pharmacy techs. We have a business center on board, along with business center partners who can manage any type of check cashing transactions or Western Union. So if someone's suffered some type of devastation and they need money transferred via Western Union or other means, then our business center partners can help them with that. Also, what goes along with this team is a trailer of water and ice. And of course, if you can imagine, following a disaster like a hurricane, water and ice are usually two top products that are always in demand. And so we always donate that to the community and hand those out. And it's kind of what you're seeing here. What you're seeing here is pictures of the mobile kitchen set up during Hurricane Laura in 2020. I'm sorry, 2021. No, 2020, I'm sorry. And what we transitioned to, instead of being an in-person queue, we've actually transitioned to a drive-through just because of COVID and whatnot. So that's actually worked out really well. So the families will drive through, they'll get a hot meal for everyone in the car for their families, and then they can go home and eat it and provide that to their families. And picture of our barbecue trailer down on the bottom, and then the water and ice support that you're seeing there. So a little bit about with our history of disasters. We're not a stranger to disasters. We've had several, as you can see. Some of the ones to highlight is the 2005 Hurricane Katrina and Rita. Many people are familiar with the impacts from Hurricane Katrina and Rita, and really that's when we started looking at how we can become better as an organization related to response hurricanes. And really what you're seeing today at Emergency Preparedness was a lot of that was born out of the lessons learned from Hurricane Katrina and Rita. We did manage a pandemic in 2009. It was a little bit different than the pandemic in 2020, but it was a pandemic. And so, we didn't have some of the same human behaviors that we had in 2009. Some of the same products that were in demand now were not in high demand, such as toilet paper and water. But we've adapted our plan to that well, and we continue to update our pandemic plan as the years have gone by. Looking at Hurricane Harvey in 2017, again, huge impact to Texas, unprecedented events, for the majority of the coast and many other parts of Texas. And so that was a huge response from HEB and different partners in the community. And then, of course, what we've all been through the last few years of the COVID-19 pandemic, Hurricane Laura, and then Winter Storm Uri, another unprecedented event for Texas. So what I'm talking about today and what I'm sharing with you today is nothing new to HEB. And really our disaster response, our community support started in 1905 with our founder, Florence Butt. And Florence was heavily involved in many other things, even prior to 1933. She was a person in the community that always helped facilitate response, whether that was for medical. She was involved in the tuberculosis outbreak, supplies, and she was also just known for helping people in her community. This is a picture of our first store in Kerrville, Texas. And so people would open, lines of credit, or Florence would help them out with whatever they needed to help support their families. And so, what HEB is done now, or is doing now, excuse me, is just really a amplified spirit of Florence. And so we call that the spirit of HEB, and that's the spirit of giving. What you're seeing today in action in Uvalde is really what the culture of our company is about. And so again, this started in 1905, and it's carried through each and every one of our partners and their hearts. I can tell you that the examples, and as an example, I've been overwhelmed by the amount of partners that have called me, emailed me, texted me, asking how they can help, how they can be involved, and how they can make a difference in Uvalde. And that just is a perfect example, and shows you the heart of our partners and where they want to be. During the pandemic, we prepared for high absenteeism, but guess what? Our partners showed up, and so they don't tap out. They show up during disasters. Craig Boyne, our company president, has quoted saying that during dark skies in Texas, the partners' hearts shine the brightest at HEB, and nothing could be more true. Excuse me. So how do we prepare for COVID? We were just talking about that this morning, as a matter of fact, and so we're sharing that story with some other leaders here at HEB. So we started looking at our pandemic plan from 2009. As I mentioned, the H1N1 influenza, and we dusted that off in early December of 2019, started taking a look at that, started planning ahead. And so we had business going in December, January, February of 2019, 2020. Not much had changed for us, other than we were starting to really look forward. And that's what we do for any disaster emergency is preparation, planning, and thinking forward constantly. And so what we had developed in 2009, we started applying for 2019, 2020, such as absenteeism, such as product demand, such as how we were going to keep our stores open. Most importantly, how we were going to keep our partners safe in a pandemic and keep our customers safe, because that's also a priority, is making sure that our customers can have a safe shopping experience at HEB. Our global sourcing team was very critical during the early stages and throughout the pandemic, but especially during the early stages. And so they were in contact with other countries, such as Chinese suppliers, suppliers in Europe and UK, and they were starting to share with us the trends that they were seeing around the globe. And so we kept the ball in front of us based on some of the trends that we were seeing in other parts of the globe. And that helped us make some earlier decisions and preparations and plans. And then again, we started looking at what we have always done is for any type of disaster. February 1st, we held our first COVID tabletop. That was on a Saturday. We met here at our corporate headquarters in San Antonio, Texas, and we brought in all our key stakeholders from the company, and we started planning out and conducting a tabletop of what the pandemic might look like. That has paid off many times. We actually have conducted several other tabletops based on the various amounts of waves and changes throughout the last 2.5 years. We opened up our Emergency Operations Center in person on February 27th, and we actually went virtual a few months later once cases really started to tick up during that first initial wave of the pandemic. So what you're seeing here in these photos is Craig Boyne, our company president, and Justin Noakes, our director of emergency preparedness. They were looking at cases in Texas, and that's compared to what it's looked like over the past 2.5 years. That was a wow moment for us, seeing that many cases. But of course, we've seen many more cases than what that picture is showing there. Some of the other challenges that we saw during the pandemic, were based on these factors. So again, how were we going to keep our partners and our customers safe? Our partners were going to show up to work the next day after the World Health Organization declared a pandemic. We knew that, but we needed to have answers for them, and which we delivered on. So how we were going to keep our partners safe, the CDC was providing guidance. And one of the key factors here was remaining adaptable throughout the first few months and then even throughout the pandemic. So if you recall some of the guidance that was coming out, different various levels of government, federal, state, and local, mask, no mask, social distance, 3 feet, 6 feet. So we had to adapt to those types of changes very quickly. And again, keeping our customers safe as well, because customers, they were at the store. There was lines around every HEB, especially that first few weeks that had been declared a pandemic. We actually, what you're seeing here is the metering of customers to try to limit the amount of people that were in the store and keep social distancing compliance and everything else that was recommended at that time. So keeping our customers safe, we immediately implemented the plastic barriers that you see in the stores now. Facility management team put those up right away within that first week. And then, of course, we implemented the social distancing based off CDC guidelines. And, we had a few obstacles and challenges through that. But overall, customers had the same shopping experience at HEB, minus some of the other things that we do, like sampling and whatnot, cooking connections, et cetera. Some of that stuff had to go away just because of infection control. So another one was keeping our supply chain moving, keeping it open, keeping as much as we could flowing to the stores. Supply chain was a challenge. It wasn't much of as much of a challenge it is here in current times as far as getting product, but our suppliers were having just as many challenges as we were as an organization. So making sure that we could get our outbound trucks in and keeping those trucks moving with product to the stores. Absenteeism. We had planned for high absenteeism during the pandemic. But as I mentioned, the heart of our partners is so great, and so many of them showed up, regardless of what was going on. And so we saw peaks of absenteeism throughout the pandemic, but we never really saw our whole absenteeism where we were expecting 30 to 50% of our workforce to be out of work, either due to illness or taking care of somebody or just choosing not to come up to work because of concern. So, we had peaks of absenteeism throughout the pandemic, but for the most part, our partners showed up. Keeping our marketing efforts open and keeping our stores fun. I'll share, a personal story that it was about almost 8 weeks before I went to HEB, and I'm usually at my store just about every other day. And I went to HEB about 8 weeks after we had activated our EOC, and just to grab a couple of things that I needed for the house. And I was a customer. I was just like these pictures here. I stood in line. I got my cart wiped. I got what I needed. It was a pretty somber experience that first few weeks of the pandemic, and it just felt different. So we had to ensure that customers had the same shopping experience because we didn't want that to change. Even though we weren't doing sampling or any type of demos or promotions, we wanted to make sure that we kept our marketing efforts in our stores going or making them fun again. And so, we continue to look at other departments like the bakery and the floral, making sure that people could still get their birthday cakes, that they could buy flowers, buy their birthday cards, whatever they needed, because there was a lot of challenges with keeping supplies going to the store. And then lastly, how did we remove any of those constraints of the above? And so that's a continuous effort, even so today. It's an ongoing daily conversation. And so that takes a lot of leadership and a lot of different subject matter experts to make sure that we remove constraints on a daily basis. So some of the success factors during the pandemic. As I mentioned, we tabletopped with our key leaders, and we did that February 1st. And so that was about a month out before the pandemic COVID was declared a pandemic. And so we were ready when that was declared. We utilized what we knew and what we had. And so our specialty prior to COVID was really focused on hurricanes. And so we utilized a lot of our plans and our playbooks from hurricanes around product, around coordination, around execution of conference calls and getting products to the stores, staffing. And so some of the same challenges that we had during hurricanes, we saw during the pandemic. So we had that experience to utilize and to lean on. We have an EOC that we stand up during emergencies and disasters. So all our subject matter experts, our supply chain experts, our communication experts, our leaders in the company, we relied on them heavily to make those key decisions and help communicate what we were doing, both internally and externally. And so internal communication is critical because you've got to let your employees, your what we call partners, keep them in the loop of what's going on and why we're making those decisions. But it's just as important to keep your external communication stakeholders involved as well. So our customers, there was challenges with compliance of masks and social distancing, and not everyone was for it, and that's okay. That's their personal choice. But we were always going to do the right thing. HEB was perception was we're going to follow compliance, we're going to follow the law. And so having to explain to customers why we required masks, why we were social distancing, why we were metering customers, and even current times, why we don't have certain products on the shelf is always about communication. So that communication it's two-way. And most of our customers have been very graceful and understood, and had a great partnership with HEB throughout the pandemic. So some of our lessons learned. The pandemic's been tough. It still is tough. It's continuous change, something that we've had to adapt to many times, based on guidance, based on behavior, based on the environment, and so we still continue to do that today. During the different peaks, we've basically repeated what we've done from day one, and so just when you think things are getting better, here comes a peak of Delta, here comes Omicron. So we have adapted quickly to those types of peaks, and we haven't done anything different that we haven't done from day one, other than enhance or execute based on lessons learned. So what we've learned during this pandemic was that our experience was limited. It was novel for everyone. We were all going through this together, and so that really impacted behavior of people, and impacted some of our decisions. You learn to be wrong at times, but you make the best decision that you can, and you move forward. We learned that resources and supplies are still limited. They were limited back then, but they continue to be limited. And so, what the underlying piece of the supply chain also is, it's not just having that product that you're looking for. There's so many other factors that go into it that people don't consider, such as the suppliers for that product, their staffing, their ingredients. They may be in short supply. So that impacts, your favorite box of crackers that you get on the shelf that's been out of stock for a few months. It's because that supplier is having the same issues as everybody else. They're having labor issues, they're having supply issues. And so that impacts us as a company. So that's a continuous conversation for us. And so, we have our merchants and supply chain experts working on that on a daily basis. Someone asked us, what are y'all planning for, any type of food shortage or supply shortage? And honest answer is, we've been talking about that since 2005. It's a daily conversation, and it's not because we're anticipating anything. It's just something that we're always having a conversation about and making sure that we plan for. People are exhausted. Our employees are exhausted. Our partners were exhausted. We've all been through a lot as a society. This is not only a medical pandemic, but it's also a social pandemic. Mentally, people have been through a lot. They've experienced a lot. And so making sure that people get time off, making sure that we've got people to backfill those positions. And one of the crucial lessons learned is single points of failure, identifying those single points of failure. So if you've got someone that's been doing that one job for 30 years and is the only one that knows how to do that job, now, if you haven't done so, it's a great time to enhance and train other people, cross-train people on how to do those jobs. Because if one thing that COVID's taught us is that people get sick, they're not going to be available. And so you have those single points of failure that can be keep you very vulnerable if you don't have those addressed. So making sure that you have the right people in place, that your bench is very strong. Things are political. Everything was political, and it still is political during this pandemic. And so not only do you have to comply with what the CDC's putting out there, but you also need to comply with local and state regulations and guidance. And so we saw and we experienced the shelter in place, the lockdowns that took place in the early stages of the pandemic, how that was going to impact our partners, everything from DOT standards, making sure that we could keep trucks on the road. And so everything is political, and you have to have the right relationships to make sure that you can execute and communicate on those issues. Excuse me, sorry about that. So one of the key factors is making sure that your relationships are strong with others in the private sector. So us, marketing with other private sector or networking with other private sector companies, the public sector, keeping relationships open with them, and then that non-government organization as well. So I'll speak on the private sector. So during the pandemic and during any disaster or emergency, it's about taking care of Texas. It's not about market share. It's not about who's going to sell more bread or who's going to sell more milk. It's about making sure people have food on their table and have what they need to get through a disaster or emergency. So networking with other private sector companies has been key. And so during the winter storm, during the pandemic, we've networked with other companies and they have leaned on us to make sure that their communities are taken care of. And so that's gone a long way. And again, at the end of the day, it's all about taking care of the community. Public sector, when they need something such as food or hydration support or some type of community support, they have called us. We've called them when we needed to get trucks through different areas. And so that happened a lot during Hurricane Harvey when we were trying to get food and water to certain areas that were impacted. Those public sector relationships really come in handy. So the last bullet point there says advanced planning is key, and I can't emphasize that enough. Have the conversations early, even if no one else is speaking about it or meeting about it. Have the conversations, even if it's a water cooler conversation. Get that conversation going and start implementing and looking at your plans, and continue to think forward. So our understanding of the private sector's role in emergencies and disasters is really this here. And again, we understand as a company, as an organization, the critical commodities and services that we provide the community, not only on a daily basis, but especially during a disaster and emergency. So if you take away food and water from people, and you can add shelter into that, just from a human factor, you're going to have a chaotic situation develop very quickly. And so if HEB and other retailers and non-government organizations, the public sector, if everybody can work together to provide food, water, shelter, medicine, whatever the community needs, you're going to keep that situation much better managed and a lot more under control versus everyone trying to fend for themselves. And so we know that the public sector is busy taking care of the community. They're there right now taking care of Uvalde. There's numerous agencies there from the federal down to the local level. And so, we appreciate and respect what they do. And they're working hard to make sure that that community is taken care of. But other companies such as HEB can have a role in that as well, and making sure that if you need food, if you need water, we can help provide that. If you need medicine, we have our mobile pharmacy. We can help take care of the community in times of disaster in the community. So again, that's about building those relationships. Communication is very important during these types of situations. And as I share with people often, you exchange business cards with somebody, build that relationship, have a lunch meeting with them, have a phone call, a Zoom meeting, build that relationship before the disaster emergency. Don't be looking for their business card while it's happening, because that phone call is going to be pretty odd when you're making that phone call. Try to build those relationships much earlier. So as we all work together as a community, as a society, different agencies, different sectors, if you can take care of the community, you're going to reinforce that hope, sense of community, and things are going to be just a little bit better than they were before. So this is a couple of different articles that have been written about HEB, and I show this because what this represents is what our understanding of what the community expects from us, really post Harvey. Planted the flag for what we do as a company and how we respond. And so just you can read the headlines here. We appreciate and highly respect what the company or what the community expects of HEB. And we try to live up to that every day, not just during disasters and emergencies, but every single day. And so let me show you a quick video let's see if I can get it to work here. Can y'all see that video?
We just have a blank screen right here.
Okay.
now.
Excuse me, let me switch over here.
while you're doing that, and I don't know if Janelle's fielded some other questions, but one question I did have is with regard to your early planning and decisions. We're in this day and age, the notion of almost just-in-time ordering and the supply chain being tighter and tighter, but some decisions have to be made about ordering ahead for additional materials. You mentioned toilet paper, or, whatever the issue of the day might be, but I'm wondering what sorts of discussions are occurring within your organization about going forward, looking at some of those commodities that quickly became problematic.
Yeah, absolutely. So our merchant teams do an amazing job of that. And so those are really daily conversations. It's not something that we're talking about just during disasters, emergencies. Our merchant team, that's something that they're talking about every single day. And they're always trying to source new products. One thing that's unique about HEB is when we say we source local, we mean it. And so a lot of our suppliers are in state, from everything from ranchers to farmers and suppliers. And so we try to pull as much as we can from the state first before we outsource outside of Texas or even international. Let me, I think I got this figured out here. Sorry. Any other questions?
There are. So, assuming a similar pandemic in the future, what are the 3 or so top things HEB will do differently with the lessons learned during this pandemic?
Yeah, so one of the, as much advanced planning as we've had and we've conducted, I think that continues to be advantageous. And so one thing we learned during Winter Storm Uri was moving quicker and that we had to move quicker and had to move faster. And so that'll always be an ongoing conversation, is how do we continue to have a further outlook on what's going on and try to plan. The other piece of that would be executing the plan. And so, we have great leadership support here at HEB. And so, we can go to our HEB leaders and share our concerns with them, and they're going to act on those concerns. They're going to listen. And so that continuing those relationships is also critical. So I don't know if we would do anything much different other than continue to enhance what we've already learned and executed on. Okay, I think I've got sorry, it keeps switching screens on me here, so apologize for that. Okay, here we go. Can y'all see that? Okay, great.
Yes.
This is a video of our deployment to hurricane in response to Hurricane Harvey, and it has some great details and shares some great stories of our response.
130-mile-per-hour wind, Harvey hitting the Texas coast.
This is the command center where HEB has brought together all of its experts who are supporting everyone from our stores to our warehousing to our manufacturing plants as a result of Hurricane Harvey.
During the notice that a hurricane was coming, we were selling about an 18-wheeler of water every 90 minutes. We were actually partners and customers were helping us get them unloaded and sold.
So the lines were definitely into the aisles. It was almost to the back. Ready and be prepared.
It is raining like you wouldn't believe. The winds are incredible. Oh my God.
Now, nightfall is bringing the chance of isolated pockets of rain and strong winds as Harvey's persistent remnants meander toward Houston.
That's part of what we're trying to do, is manage two catastrophic disasters. Right. One of them in Corpus Christi, now the rain event in Houston. So maybe the largest storm in our lifetime here. Absolutely, absolutely largest flood event in Texas history.
What's going on over here off Ritterman Road is that HEB is getting ready to launch an aid effort in a big way.
We just pulled into Rockport a few minutes ago and got our truck situated. And this is really, as we were driving in, the first time we saw just the visual devastation from Hurricane Harvey. And I know it personally breaks my heart. The Texas coast holds a really special place in the hearts of all Texans.
with the hurricane hitting Harvey and the rains here in Houston, last Tuesday, the water started to come up. About 1 o'clock, decided to shut the store down. We started to see about 2 foot of water in the parking lot. At that point, I made the decision to get partners home, customers home safe. So within an hour, we were taking on water. And we continued to take on water until the ultimate outcome was about 6.5 feet inside the store. I asked for Kingwood because I wanted to be here. And it's been my baby. I've been excited about it from day one. Put forth an enormous amount of time into the store. And just a little devastating, to be honest. But we'll come back. I know we will. So it's just going to take a little bit of time. But walking in, seeing it every day, yeah, it's pretty tough. No doubt.
Family helping family. That to me transcends anything that we have ever talked about at HEB. If you think about it in your own personal family, when your family needs help, you drop everything and you go, right? That's what's happening today all throughout HEB. Because when you give up your time, you're giving up yourself. And that's what every single one of you is doing. So thank you from the bottom of my heart, because without you, one, we wouldn't be back in business. And two, there would not be such a thing called the spirit of HEB. So go forth, God bless and safe travels, and know that the entire company is behind you, and you are representing the spirit of HEB with what you do.
I'm here with Ed Choi, 23-year veteran driver. Handle is Fleetwood. So we're on our way after a long day, having delivered a convoy of 14 tractor trailers down here in Beaumont early this morning, delivering much needed water to the community down here.
So HEB brought its mobile relief units from San Antonio that it's taken to other serious weather events. A much needed pharmacy, a business center for payments, cashing checks, and 2 mobile kitchens. They're equipped to prepare and give away up to 2,000 meals 3 times a day to residents and first responders.
We're here at the Energy Center where we're getting ready for dinner at 6 p.m. with some of our amazing volunteers. Some of our partners from HEB and Mi Tienda and Jovi's. We're so excited to have them here.
We've had our mobile kitchen in Victoria, Aransas Pass, Rockport, all over, and really just want to do our part to support not only our first responders, but also the individuals who've been displaced that have shown incredible resilience and spirit. They're Houston strong and we're Texas strong.
This is your mobile kitchen disaster relief team, and they're phenomenal. They've been doing such an amazing job this week. And so just wish them luck, guys. Send them some positive vibes. They're really energized by all the people that they're meeting out here and the warm meals that they're getting to serve.
It's bigger than just stocking shelves. It's bigger than just putting cereal on a shelf. It's going to provide hope to a community that is in major need of some hope, devastated by their losses, customers and partners both. So we want to be there to help. We want to be there to provide that hope.
To Mr. Charles Buck and everybody at HEB, a donation of $5 million is truly incredible. I mean, there are no words to describe when people step to the plate like that.
I do want to applaud HEB here in the state of Texas.
I think this is part of the reason why HEB is so great. Doing this for our partners, taking care of our own as well as the community is something that's truly awesome.
This is really nice. I mean, to have all these people show up that, just out of nowhere, basically, just to help. But that's kind of what HEB is like. You don't realize how important it is for people to help out. Thank you. Just a simple thank you.
A big hug, a big high five, and just a heartfelt thank you.
Thank you, partners, for making a huge positive difference in the lives of others.
Thanks, partners, for everything that you've done with your help on Hurricane Harvey.
A sincere thank you on behalf of myself and everybody on the support team.
Thank you to the partners across our great company. Together, we are HEB Strong.
Thank you, partners, for your amazing commitment to our customers and our fellow partners during the recent hurricane.
The fact that you took care of our customers with a smile on your face and a hug for them just warms my heart, and I can't thank you enough for all your hard work. Thank you.
What you did made a massive difference
and I think was so different than what we've seen anywhere else in the world in response to disasters like this. And you made it happen. Thank you so much.
We really appreciate you. We love you. Thank you so much.
You represent the best of the spirit of HEB. When disaster darkens Texas skies, the spirit of HEB shines brightest. Thank you, partners.
And so that is a overview of what deployment to Hurricane Harvey looked like in 2017. And, we had a similar one in 2020 with Hurricane Laura striking the Golden Triangle of East Texas. And so, our partners are the ones, they're the heroes. They make the biggest difference in what we do as an organization and contribute to our success. So I'll pause there for any other questions.
Thank you. That was a wonderful presentation. Janelle, have we got additional?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes, we have some questions about your partners. How are the frontline staff kept in the loop on emergency management plans and procedures at HEB? What do the drills look like at HEB?
Yeah, so we take care of that in a couple different ways. So on a daily basis and normal operating conditions, we have a lot of instructor-led and then also computer-based training that each and every partner goes through, from everything from preparing for disaster to workplace violence, active shooter type situations. So we cover a conglomerate of topics with every partner, at every different level of leadership in our company. And so they receive that training. We also do regional seminars where we focus on a certain topic. For example, this summer, we're refocusing on workplace violence. So we'll conduct a summit for every region throughout the next 3 or 4 months. And so we'll make sure we'll target each and every single store leader during those summits and also some other partners in there. And then they share that information along with their regional partners to our store partners.
Great, thank you. There are a few folks that I recognize their names on this particular webcast, and they're very concerned about worker safety. So other than, and it seems like HEB put up those screens very quickly. Like y'all were just ready to do that. Do you have advice for other retail establishments on how to implement, not just plan, but implement things in a hurry?
Yeah, that's, it's not one person's effort or idea. The effort is always a whole community-based approach. And I often share that with other leaders and network with other companies that, when you're planning for emergencies and disasters, you need to include your key stakeholders and really your community, which includes, some of your, if you have retail stores, some of your regional leaders that manage those stores, et cetera. Because the more people you have involved in the conversation in the early stages of planning, the easier that's going to be to execute and ensuring people's safety. So again, if you're having the conversation when the disaster is happening or the emergency is happening or even post, it's too late. So early planning, keeping key stakeholders involved in the conversation, and then just focusing, really broadening your vision of who's in that community and who needs to be involved in those conversations.
Thank you very much. And in thinking about partnerships, we've had a couple of questions about governmental partnerships. Let me try to find one here. How important is it to have accurate and timely data from your governmental partners?
It is vital. We have partners that work directly with our government agencies at the state and local levels on a daily basis, and then especially during disasters and emergencies. So those relationships really come in handy when it comes, when there's a disaster emergency happening. So it is vital to your operation, and it could be something as simple as making sure that trucks keep moving down the road if there's any type of DOT restrictions, or making sure that your teams, your employees are identified for the jobs that they do. So if they're essential personnel, if they're essential to making sure that your operation stays up and running because you're helping support first responders of the community. The government needs to understand that. So I encourage you to make sure you have those conversations with your local representation of government.
Thank you. And a related question is, what could the government do to make your job easier?
That's a great question. You know, and I don't want to speculate on that. I mean, the relationships there's always going to be challenges in the government. And as I mentioned earlier, everything is political. So I think, you know, from a emergency and disaster perspective, making sure we have clear communication and guidance always helps the situation. That was a challenge during the early stages of the pandemic. And it wasn't just any one agency or government. You know, there was a lot of different direction going on during the early stages of the pandemic. So clear and concise communication and direction is always going to help with any disaster or emergency.
Sure. Wonderful. Thank you. We have a question here. Curious to know whether your purchasing department or team could sense an incoming potential pandemic. And you discussed this towards the beginning of the presentation. Were there changes in population behaviors even before the government announcement?
So some of the, I don't know if there was something that we sensed from our purchasing department. As I mentioned, our global sourcing department was really tracking the behavior that we were seeing in Europe and China or throughout Asia. And so, you know, one of the key things that we look for is customers' behavior and shopping patterns pre-disaster. So, you know, when people start buying water and now it's toilet paper, we know that those types of items are going to be in demand. So while we're still tracking those types of products, we already have planned ahead to ensure that we can fulfill that customer's need of whatever whether it's toilet paper, water, coffee, or whatever it may be. So we're constantly looking at that. But it related to just the pandemic, I don't think there was any precursor of shopping pre-pandemic other than what we saw happen once the pandemic was declared. And so once it was declared, we saw just an influx of people. And again, as I mentioned, there was lines around the stores. Everything was in demand, and that's mainly because people just didn't know what the next day was going to bring. People didn't know if they were going to be in their homes for weeks, months, days, what the situation may have resulted in. So,
sure, I remember people being scared, especially mobility impaired people or elderly people, like my parents. An economics question: how, if at all, did the pandemic shift the business model for HEB? And here, thinking along the lines of curbside service or the mobile app and home delivery.
Yeah, so curbside and home delivery was in high demand, still is. And I personally was not a curbside shopper until recently, but we looked at that from a business perspective. Are people still going to shop in the stores? Are they going to want, I know people that still to this day refuse to go, anywhere in public. And so curbside, home delivery, favor. One thing that we implemented right away was a favor helpline, primarily targeted at the senior citizen population. And so that population, and I can speak for my parents as an example, they're not savvy on technology and internet and home delivery ordering. And so they were panicked. And so I had to help them, with that and making sure that they get their groceries along with some other family members. And so we stood up that favor hotline, and that was solely dedicated to helping people place home delivery orders and ensuring that they could get what they needed during the course of the pandemic. And so we also did a similar model during the initial onset of the vaccines being available. So same thing, people that didn't have access to the internet, didn't have a computer, didn't know how to schedule an online appointment or where to find vaccine. We still to this day have a vaccine hotline. And so we understood that piece of the community and did everything we could to respond to support it. So yeah, COVID has shifted the business many times in many different ways, but those are some of the highlights from a home delivery and curbside perspective.
Thank you for that. So I'm going to do two more questions, and I'm going to combine these two, and they're mostly regional. So how does HEB decide where to deploy their services if there's a large scale disaster? And then for the different regions, for example, San Antonio versus the Rio Grande Valley versus Beaumont, are there different deployment implementations or plans for these areas?
So I'll answer the first question. So where we deploy the mobile kitchens or disaster relief services is dependent on the impacts of the community. So during Hurricane Harvey, our teams were out for in excess of 21 days. And so they went from the deep valley of South Texas all the way to Houston. And so they kind of followed the path of Harvey and fed and took care of those communities on a daily basis over a course of 21 days. And so that's dictated by the need of the community and then also by the impacts of our business and our stores. So there's many stores impacted. We have travel teams that already sometimes pre-deploy or they're already ready to go once the system or emergency is over. They can quickly deploy out to those regions. So it's just dependent on the impacts to the business and onto the community. And could you repeat the second question just for clarification?
Sure. It was about the difference between deployment and the implementation of the deployment regionally, whether San Antonio, Rio Grande Valley, Houston.
Yes, I get it. I'm tracking. So there's not a difference in whether we deploy to San Antonio or Houston or to Victoria or to a small town in West Texas. If the community is in need, and if we're available and it's safe to deploy, we'll deploy to help that community. An example, what we're doing currently in Uvalde. There's been so many resources coming from all over the state and even the nation to help this small community of 15,000 in Uvalde, Texas. And so, if the need is there, that's going to dictate, our deployment model.
Thank you, Joaquin. There have been a few comments and a couple of questions about employee morale and how everybody at HEB, they're very positive. I know that I'm a shopper at HEB, my favorite store, and there's several that are near my home. So kudos to you. So I won't ask this as a question, but I want to thank you for stepping in. I know Justin Noakes had some technical difficulties in joining, but you were a rock star, and we really appreciate you stepping in to save the day. So I did want to tell everybody that we are recording this webcast, and it should be available on the TEPHI website, and it's right here in the middle of your screen, tephi.texas.gov. It should be available by the end of business on Friday. We think that it's going to be up there. So please visit our website. And Jessica, if we can move forward to the next slide. On our website, we have information about a certificate program in pandemic preparedness and response. It's a wonderful program. It's led by Kathy Troisi, one of our epidemiologists, faculty here at the School of Public Health. You can scan this QR code and learn all about it. And Jessica, if we can move one more to the next slide. I also want to invite everybody to the Texas Public Health Summit, and this is in collaboration with the Department of State Health Services. And this is very exciting. It's going to be in person in Houston on July 14th, and we're going to have a simultaneous webcast, as Dr. Borwinkle mentioned at the beginning of this. So the link is at the very bottom. I'm going to leave that up here for just a moment so that you guys can capture that. Thank you guys so much. Joaquin, you are a rock star, truly. Bob, Eric, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
The attendees as well. Go ahead, guys.
Yep. Thank you all for participating, and thank you, HEB, for sharing your experience and knowledge.
Our pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Have a wonderful day. Bye, everybody.